Amazing grace, how sweet the sound that saved a wretch like me. I once was lost, but now am found. I was blind, but now I see. Wrote that, I did. And you knew it, didn't you? I could tell. Mouthing the words you were. When I wrote it, I never expected it to be so famous. I can see the commonality in it, though, you know. Haven't we all felt lost at times and rejoiced when we found ourselves again? Haven't we all, refused to see things that are there in plain sight? But I haven't come as preacher today. I've come as storyteller, because I, John Newton, author of that poem and song, yes, I have come to tell you my story. And what a story it is. Not a story of the pious preacher that you know, but a story of immorality and violence and, yes, slavery. I don't know really what started me off as a violent young man. Was it the fact that my mother died when I was 7? She was puritanical, mind, full of discipline, but I remember her long hair. I remember the touch of her hand upon my face. To be deprived of a mother's love at so young an age. Was that the start of it? Or maybe it was the boarding school that I went to, for that surely was a bad enough experience. There I was, timid, frightened, but refused to show it. But bullying from other boys didn't take me long to learn to become the bullier. Maybe it was that. Or maybe it was the fact that by the age of 11, I was off at sea with my father. He'd always been a seafaring man, always a sailor, and I learnt soon that the sea was in my blood too. 11. Yeah, that was all. Taken off to sea. And I loved it. Maybe it was there that I learnt to swear, gamble, and fight. Yes, I would fight with anybody. Big rebel in me, you see. I chose my fists over anything else. That was the way it was. Big Fighter John. That was what they called me. Big Fighter John. Come on, I'll take on anybody, I'll say. Who's the first to have a go? That was the drink talking most of the time, because I could drink and swear and gamble like a real trooper. Yeah, I was not a pleasant man. And then at 17, still quite young, I think, at 17, my father retired from the sea. And what he said was, John, I found just the trade for you. You're not coming to sea with me anymore. From now on, you're going to work on the slave plantations. You'll be the manager. Yeah, out there, Sierra Leone, other places like that. Yes, you will be the slave manager. Well, the thought didn't appeal that much. And the biggest reason it didn't appeal was quite clear. Her name was Polly. Oh yes, I loved Polly. But my fate was sealed, so there I was on my way to see her. Whistling away, happy as Larry, on my way to see my girl before I set off for the slave plantation. And I knew I'd be back. I knew I'd have frequent trips back to see her, and maybe it wouldn't be long before we could be married. And then jumped on. Now listen, I've already proved to you I'm good in a fight, but 4 men to 1 is no absolute match. And there it was. Press-ganged I was. Press-ganged into the Navy. The Navy! Huh, God. Have you ever heard anything like it? The Navy was no place for a man like me. The Navy wanted discipline. The Navy wanted absolute tidiness. The Navy wanted subservience. And that was not John Newton. Not John Newton at all. So I did the only thing I could. Deserted. And got caught. And taken back. Yeah. I know what it's like to be whipped. 8 dozen lashes. Deep, deep crevices in your back. I knew that each lash would create a deeper crevice. And the greatest thing of all was the oblivion when you passed out because you couldn't take it any longer. But not once did I cry out. I'd give no man the satisfaction of hearing me squeal. So that was it. John Newton, 8 dozen lashes, and then they demoted me. I didn't want to serve with them, and I was so violent and aggressive, in the end they didn't want me to serve with them. So we actually struck a bargain, and a good bargain it was. We actually decided that I would work on the slave trade. I would actually work on the slave boats. Common then. Slavery was the way in Britain that men made their business. Commonplace. Not a problem. So, I joined a slave ship. But the men there, they weren't skilled. They didn't know what they were doing. I could sail twice as far, twice as quick as them. I loved it, mind. All the hoorah and up she rises. But I didn't like the other men. They had no balls. They weren't confident. They weren't able to rebel against the captain with his stupid orders when I knew better. Yeah, arrogant I was, and I didn't have a friend amongst them. In fact, secretly, inside my head, I made a plan to murder the captain. Never came about though, because what happened was we arrived at Sierra Leone to get some slaves, and we found ourselves with a slave trader called Amos Crow. Now there's a name for you. Crow he was. More of a gannet, really. Greedy. Yeah. Struck a hard bargain. And we went ashore. And we got our supply of slaves. Took them back on the boat. When the captain said to me, "John, I have a feeling we can squeeze a few more in. I want you to go back. Go back to Crow. Negotiate a couple more men. Choose some of the fairest and the strongest in amongst the corral, the slave corral. Get yourself down there quick, before we sail. Well, that's what I did. Strange for me to follow orders on reflection, but who knows God's plan for us, eh? So, that was it. Off I went back to the slave corral and Amos Crow. Yeah, Crow said. Get in there. Have a good look. Decide who you want. And so I went into the corral where the slaves were. And behind me, Amos Crow shut the gate. Locked it. Yeah, that's right. Locked me in amongst the slaves whilst my boat sailed away. So there we have it. John Newton, famous preacher, corralled with slaves. And in fact, Crow gave me as a slave to his wife, Princess Pico. Beautiful woman. But oh, what pleasure she took in having a white man for a slave. Yeah, I know all about slavery. I know how to be made to eat your food out of an animal's trough. I know how it is to be ridiculed. I know how it is to be tormented day and night. Go there, do this. Oh, don't speak back, John. There'll be no food for you. Tortured. Torture. That's what slavery is. And so I stayed there. 2 years as a slave, until my father finally managed to send a ship to take me home. He must have paid Crow handsomely for that, I think. But pay him he did. And so, that was that. Got on the ship, heading for Dublin, thank God. There we were, on board. Me with freedom beginning to be in sight. Me full of resentment, been locked away for 2 whole years. Did it make my aggression any better? My temper any better? None of it. I was full of hate. And who wouldn't be? At the men who had betrayed me, at what had gone on. I could not wait to get back to England and get my revenge. There I was, on the ship, when a huge storm blew up. Now I tell you this, I was a seafaring man. I have no fear of being in a normal storm. But this, I have no fear of 12-foot waves. I have no fear of winds that blow like you've never seen it before. But on this day, I had fear. Huge fear of the hole, the great gaping hole that appeared in the boat. We were doomed. There was nothing for it. It was clear we were going to die. After all this, only just gained my freedom, and I was to die? No, that could not be so. I would not have it. And the fear really clutched at my heart. Not the fear of dying, but the fear of not living. And for the first time, I went down on my knees. My first time since I was 7 years old, I got down on my knees and I prayed and I prayed and I prayed to God. And I struck a bargain with him. You let me live, and I promise I will serve you. If you exist, you will let me live, and I promise to serve you for the rest of my days. And once that promise was elicited from me, a strange thing happened. The boat, the cargo, it seemed to slant, as though the boat were actually sinking to the one side, but not all the cargo, just enough to block the hole, slid, and it slid across the bottom of the boat, and it covered the hole. Water was still coming in, but it was manageable. And that cargo, which to my knowledge had actually been tethered up tight, had somehow managed to move in that right direction and cover that hole. And we weren't that far from Dublin. And with a lot of bailing and a lot of hard work, we actually arrived in Dublin, safe and sound. And I who had made a promise to God, I knew I had to keep it. And when I arrived in England, I let go, gradually, not easily, of all the hatred and the jealousy that I had. Because now my heart was full of thanks. Thanks to a God who had saved me. And so I trained to be a preacher. It took me 7 years to be accepted into the church. They remembered too much of my past at first. But yes, a preacher I became, dedicated to God. And yet, I still was an investor in the slave trade. Yes, I was a Christian, a man of deep faith and believing in God in such a way that he ruled my whole life. And I saw no ill in the slave trade. I saw nothing wrong with it. Nothing at all. It was the way we worked in England. That was the way business was run. That was how we made our livings, those of us who could afford it. I was preacher and slave trader for many, many a year. That's how strong conditioning can be, you see. That's how strong you can be blinded and not see. There I was, a converted man, a man who had been a slave himself. How could I not have seen the sin in carrying on with the slave trade? How could I not see? That's the strength of conditioning. And it took me 35 years, and I do confess, the easing out of the slave trade, it becoming less economically profitable. It took that to happen before I wrote my very first pamphlet decrying the slave trade. That was 35 years after I'd converted. It took me 35 years to see through the conditioning to see through the domestication, to see through the terrible, terrible thing that slavery actually was. And how do I feel about that now? Regret? Yes. But I take comfort in the fact that I do not believe I am the only one who sometimes shuts away things, who sometimes doesn't see things as they really are, simply because it's convenient, or simply because I'm so used to it. The society within which I live is so used to it that I really cannot see it. I'm not the only one. Of that I am sure. And what did I, John Newton, learn? I learnt it can take a lifetime for a man to truly see. How sweet the sound that saved a wretch. I once was lost, but now I'm found. I was blind, but now I truly see.